So, delighted to introduce Doris.
Thank you, Simon. How lovely. What a kind invitation to have me here. And thank you, everyone who's coming today or who's here now. I'm sure you could do other things after Christmas and New Year celebrations. So it's very good of you to make the time, I think. Why am I doing this? Well, I think intuitively I was a Ruskinian when I was 16 without knowing it, because his approach to drawing was something I was very keen to develop. That was partially nurtured by an apprenticeship I did after my A-levels in Germany, where the method of teaching drawing was very Ruskinian without anyone saying so. So we were actually told to pick some wildflowers from the hay meadows, and then we had 2 hours in a classroom, and we weren't allowed to speak. We weren't allowed to listen to Walkmans. We had to just quietly draw and observe. And I think that's when I learned to draw properly. And so that stuck within me for a long time. And then many, many, many years later, I decided to do my PhD on Ruskin without actually knowing that much about him. I just loved his drawings. I discovered his drawings throughout my later years, and I really loved them. And so in the end, my PhD was practice-based, I should add, so I don't want you to think I'm the scholar on him. So I was particularly looking at his method of drawing and how far that could be of continued use in the contemporary approaches we have towards drawing and art making, and in particular with the kind of underlying vision of nature which Ruskin has, and proto-ecological themes. I say that sounds a bit posh, proto-ecological, but of course ecology wasn't really a term they used such as very much, if at all, please correct me, in the 19th century. So, in a way, he seemed to have foreshadowed a lot of things which are important to us now. So that's by way of introduction why I'm doing this. I'm delighted to be able to share some of my drawing approaches with you. They are slightly different from what we had with Kateri, in the sense that I've picked a section from the letter one towards the end of the letter one from the Elements of Drawing, where Ruskin uses a different approach. You could say he contradicts himself, but I don't think that's the case. I think he's just saying, look, you're wonderful with doing very detailed leaves or fingers or whatever we've done, stones, you're wonderful. You can kind of practice that in a wonderful meditative way, and you should continue to do so. But how do we deal with when we have several stones or when we have several leaves on a tree or on a branch? How do we pursue that? Because surely you can't draw every single leaf the way you do, in this kind of very careful approach. So he talks about this as a mystery of quantity. Now, I think most of you probably would have had a chance to look at the PowerPoint already, but I do want to run through it with you a little bit because I don't have fancy equipment, unfortunately, so I can't show you while I'm drawing. I just have a basic laptop. So I think the PowerPoint is a sort of way of trying to make up for that. So I'm going to share screen now. There will be times for drawing, don't worry. I'm not just going to talk all the time. Or the joys of PowerPoint sharing. Let's see, hopefully it works. Right. Okay. I'll try and get full screen. So there was a little bit of a typo, which was my fault on the website. It should, of course, be the mystery of quantity and not quality, because it's about how do we draw the multitude of things. So quantity is the word. So in letter one, he breaks down that problem. How do we proceed from having learned to draw a single leaf or a single item, whatever, to an arrangement on a branch if it's leaves, or a multitude of the same kind of units? And although this particular last section of letter one is designed for studio use and indoors, I think he has put it there because the next letter, letter two, is about going outside, outdoor, to draw outside. And so I think he's giving you some sort of preparatory steps, some tools towards coping with what it's like if you go outside into the landscape. And those of you who practice plein air, you know how difficult it can be to do successful drawings in the outside, because weather, climate, age, ability, comfortable sitting down. There aren't any convenient park benches in the middle of landscape at times. You just have to make do. So there are lots and lots of factors, including wind, which can make drawing outside very difficult. So the more you know how to deal with what you're looking at ahead, the better this experience will be. The other thing which I wanted to explain ahead of the workshop was that paper at Ruskin's time would have not been as ultra white as we get it now. Just went to an art shop yesterday in Kendal, and all the papers are white, really white. And that is actually quite a shame, really, because I think it's nice if there's a bit of color in them. When I used to do a lot of printmaking, I actually preferred the kind of antique whites, which are sort of slightly yellowish, to print on because it's not quite so bright. Anyway, so the drawings I have looked at by Ruskin, in particular in the Ruskin archive in Lancaster, they're often quite brownish, but that could also simply be that they're actually, due to sun exposure, they ended up getting stained because cheaper papers just go brown with UV light basically changing it and making it look darker. I think with those drawings, it was absolutely not intentional for them to go so dark because you can hardly see the drawings anymore. But even with some of his more finished drawings, which are on show or an archive, still like the ones in um, um, the ones I've attached to the PowerPoint, from the Ashmolean collection, even those are actually colorful. And so what I'm suggesting, or what I suggested, was that you might want to prepare and bring something which is already pre-toned. This could be just a manila envelope, or it could be that you're preparing a ground by staining it with tea or coffee or with soy sauce. Make sure you dilute the soy sauce, so otherwise it'll be very dark. Or you can use very diluted ink, or you can use diluted watercolor hues. Of course, the papers Ruskin would have used would have been genuinely colored. So the Turner blue, which you see kind of a tiny little section of here, that was kind of woven in, or is woven in, so to say, in the paper making process. I don't really understand how it's made. I've made some paper in the past, but I think the Turner blue is a very special process. If you want to buy it, I think it's about £8 a sheet. If you still, there is this German paper maker who actually still makes it. If you go to that link, it will take you there. So I thought how we can emulate this if you use a color which both Turner and Ruskin liked, cerulean blue. You could dilute your cerulean blue and put like a wash onto a watercolor paper, although this kind of watercolor paper I've got here is not so suitable for detailed drawings because it has a bit of a cold pressed surface, which means it's a bit rocky to draw on. But the advantage, sorry, of that type of paper is, however, that it takes the water better, so it might not buckle quite so much. We're not going to do any stretching now. If you're interested in doing that, and you're very welcome to try it out yourself. You basically have to tape your paper down and dilute a liquid and apply it with a fat brush like we've got here. And let it dry, and then you can draw on it. You can see the Turner blue here as the background of John Ruskin's The Dryad's Waywardness. I think he called, Simon, you may want to correct me on this, but I think he had this thing about calling oaks dryads for some reason. I don't know why that is. Do you?
I'm not the expert on that, but there might be others here who are. Um, I don't know if Rachel has a take on that.
No, I'm just trying to think of him doing that.
Joanna has said, I think it's an ancient word for oak.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
How
Mm.
wonderful. Yeah, I should have looked it up, shouldn't I? But thank you very much for that. That's useful. I really love this drawing. I stumbled across it in preparation for this PowerPoint. I love it because it's the most unpromising subject I think you can just think of or conceive of taking for a study. It's a poor old oak branch without any leaves. And I mean, why would you want to draw that? It's just kind of crazy. And he makes such a beautiful drawing out of it. And it's all about expectations. What I see in this drawing is where we are right now, January, dreaming of spring. There's already the buds there, which will take us to the summer and to the spring and into the summer. And the Turner blue really helps to let that kind of drawing ping out. That's how it looks to me. It comes forward, and it comes forward because of the heightening with white, which she used quite a lot, which is used by a lot of old masters. And if you look up old master drawings, to kind of create a sort of sense of three-dimensionality and lifting the object away from being part of the paper. So you use some sort of umber, kind of brownish, reddish brownish color with some slightly darker, maybe maybe some darker ambers, maybe burnt ambers, and maybe some reds. I'm not an expert on pigments, but he definitely uses some white, which is painted onto that colored background. And the white, it wouldn't work on white bleached paper. So that's why we need some sort of surface to work on today, which will allow you to explore this kind of heightening with white. And this is just another example, which is nice because both these examples are actually about where we are now. We're in January, so if you're in the northern hemisphere, you will not have many plants with leaves on, unless they're kind of Mediterranean or evergreen plants. And they're often not ideal because the evergreen plants we get this time of the year are very shiny, and we know what Ruskin thinks of shiny. It's actually very difficult to make shiny things work the same way as non-shiny things. So I tried to draw an ilex in preparation for this, a holly basically, and found the shininess of the leaf quite problematic. But evergreens tend to have this slightly shiny. The other thing I found today in the garden is an osmanthus shrub leaf, so might show you this later. But I mean, you can basically do with dried, I suggested that you might just want to collect a branch with dried oak leaves on it or dried beech leaves, because a lot you find if you go for a walk, a lot of trees still hang on to the dead leaves. They seem to be stuck onto them. They have certain advantages and certain disadvantages. They curl much more than they would do when they were fresh in summer or spring. So you make it in some ways more difficult to draw them. But on the other hand, you can deal with plants which are typical for our own kind of climate zone. If you're based in Northern Europe, in the Northern Hemisphere at least. This is an olive spray. And same tricks. Here we have a brownish kind of paper, which could be your kind of manila envelope almost. And what he's done is he's used some sort of warm black for the drawing, and then he heightens with the white again. And often, which is so much easier with the white to do, often leaves have the center folds tend to be often white, like a white vein or a red vein. And the white veins are really hard to spare out in white paper because you've got to work around it with graphite. So if you've got a tonal paper, you can basically start with your gray and blacks and then use your white to bring that kind of center fold, that kind of key vein which runs through the actual leaf. You can bring that out, and you can note how it's changing from, if you look very carefully at the drawing, how it's changing from white going into dark because it's in shadow, and how it gets into dark in perspective with where the light is hitting the plant. So it's actually quite complicated drawing, I think, what he's done here, even though the leaf shapes seem quite simple. And then he seemed to have pulled out some of the white to create a sort of extra boundary, for want of a better word, for the black. So there's slight blue in it. So it's kind of interesting. It's interesting to study his drawings to help us define what he actually wants us to do, I think. So these are some of my attempts, which are not half as nice, not quarter as nice as his, but at least it makes it more accessible for us. So on the left, we've got like, this is the back of sort of a graphic design poster print or something. So it's a lovely, really lovely brown surface, which is ready-made. Here I applied a wash. So that was pre-stretched, and I think it was tea, and I think I didn't use quite enough tea. And here I emulated the Turner blue with cerulean, did my drawing, and then did this trick Ruskin uses where you kind of put an edge in, so to say, against the shape of the leaf. And I used some sort of brownish, reddish brown. Actually, I used a red, if I remember rightly. It looks quite brown, but a red color for my watercolor box. With the hope that it sort of will make the plant come forward a bit. That was the idea. So you can see here my attempt with the holly. So one of the things he says in the letter is that when you've got your branch with you, and I hope you've got something, you may find it's still too much to deal with. And I had exactly that problem with the ilex. I thought, oh gosh, there's so many leaves, and they're over and undercut each other, and they're kind of quite complicated in their own right, in the way they reflect the light and are bendy and so on. So I just busily stripped some out to make it a little bit easier. And he does allow you to do that, although he's the sort of type you'd think who wouldn't, but he does actually say, remove some leaves if it's too complicated, so you can manage what you're seeing. And if that means bringing it right back down to one leaf at a time or just one leaf, that's fine too, because one of the other things he asks you to do is to remove all the leaves so you can see actually where they connect with the stem. So you could do that with your branch, or you could partially remove some of the leaves now if you want to. So you can pick up on the pattern. Are they alternately positioned? Are they kind of like a helix, kind of going round the stem of the branch, or are they kind of very kind of flat, like symmetrically paired up against each other? So you learn something about how the leaves get attached to the stem. And that's the next step, or the first step towards the tree, isn't it? So then he's also saying when you're going to do your drawing from your stripped bare or stripped down kind of branch, keep it 1-to-1 scale. Don't make it bigger, don't make it smaller. Just position it flat onto your piece of paper and start drawing it. I think I suggest we'll give this a go for a few minutes, for maybe 10 minutes. You don't have to be over precious with it. Just strip it down to kind of a few basic leaves, hold on to the stem, draw the stem as an outline drawing, and a few leaves coming off it, which says something about the arrangement of the leaf in relation to the stem. Don't worry about it being a good drawing, just kind of try and understand the plant. I think that's what this is about. So if you're happy to do so, I would say let's give this 10 minutes until 1/2 past for you just to have a go. And we move on from there in 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Excellent. Thank you.
I can,
And presumably, Doris, if people have questions, you're happy for them to unmute and ask you.
yeah, absolutely. And should I stop sharing for now so people can
Um,
know?
I'd maybe keep it, might be a useful kind of reference point to
Okay,
have. Yeah.
all right. And in terms of, you'll have to help me with the if people put things into chat because I
Yeah.
can't see that at the
Yeah.
moment.
I'll read those to you. Yeah, no
Brilliant,
problem.
thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you can use any tool you like. If you prefer pencil, that's probably what most people prefer to use, but whatever you have. I'm just going to very gently ask you now to put that aside, even if it's unfinished. Can come back to that in your own time. If you have the space, just lay out that sheet of paper with the leaf branches as it is at the moment, so you can return to it if you wish to. And we're going to move on to have a look at some of the other aspects of that section I've been looking at in the elements of drawing. If that's okay with you. So returning to the PowerPoint now. Has anyone got any questions before I move on? Well, you can always spare them for later. We will have question time at the end as well. So the next thing, hang on, but was that right? Is that the next thing? Yes, sorry. The next thing he talks about is that it is so confusing to look at the foreshortening of leaves, and that is a tricky thing. Because you will have found if you had several leaves on your stem still that they're kind of going in different directions, and they're kind of, if they're old ones, like here, these beech leaves I've collected from a beech stem, they kind of get very curly, much more curly than they normally would do. So you've got bigger problems with the foreshortening and the reflection. If you look at this one, for instance, I don't know whether you can see my arrow going over it or whether that's just me. But the third leaf down, if you look at it, it's kind of curling up on itself, and it has sections where it's reflecting the light more than others. And it's very hard to see where's the inside and the outside. So you're giving yourself a hard job with these old leaves, a harder one than with the evergreens, or, if it were summer and you have a branch there with fresh leaves, it would be a little bit easier. But you can see that each leaf has a totally different orientation. So he's talking about kind of how confusing that is. And he's suggesting that you spend a little bit of time to look at the foreshortening. And I think you should do that, but not now. I think I would quite like to move on to the next bit. And then when we've done the next bit, you can return to this idea of the foreshortening, perhaps, and either do it in your own time or maybe do it towards the end of the session. Because what he is asking to do what he's asking you to do next is actually quite simple. You don't have to make a big effort, and I think that's perhaps a bit of a relief sometimes. So what he's actually saying, which is really not what he normally says because he hates outlines, he says, get yourself a pencil and do very quickly an outline of these leaves, which have all this foreshortening, separate leaves. Just do a very quick outline. Doesn't have to be perfect, as quick as you can. And then fill that in with a wash of diluted ink, or if you prefer, you can use diluted watercolor, but you need something liquid. So I hope you've brought something, or where you are, you can get some form of liquid. So you can dilute your paint a little bit. So you get a wash and you fill in what you've just done with a wash of diluted black or ink. And the whole thing shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. So if you want to have a go at that, you can use white paper for that, any paper you like. Because it's just a quick exercise. Is that okay? Has anyone got any problems about that or anything you want to ask?
I was just going to ask, with the leaves, you're not, when you fill them with the diluted wash, you're not attempting to create any light or shade with the wash.
I
It's
don't
simply
think
filling
so.
it and letting it dry
Yeah,
as it dries. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think he just wants you. So that's how I understood the text. But of
Yeah.
course, everyone's welcome to check for themselves, and
Yeah.
it's up to interpretation, perhaps. I just
Okay.
find with the diluted ink, it pools in certain areas more than others. So there is kind of variety, even because, it's not a very even wash I've applied. I just very quickly filled it in. So it kind of creates a bit of perhaps an illusion. Some of them look perhaps illusionistic, but it wasn't intended.
Okay. And Joanna has asked in the chat, she's written, and this is leaves off the branch. So
Leaves
you're
off the
suggesting these
branch.
are loose leaves rather than.
Yeah, these are the ones you stripped off. If you haven't stripped any off, you've got to start stripping some off your branch. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
these are off, definitely. At this stage, you'll come back to the others in a minute.
Okay.
What I'm hoping you'll get out of this session is like a little stack almost, maybe 4 or 5 drawings, which are not perfect, but show you that you've explored a theme through different ways or in different ways according to how Ruskin prescribes it. And they all add up towards the knowledge of how you draw a branch, which might become a little tree next year. You never know. Oh, it's already this year, 2026. Is there someone saying something?
I think there's just background noise for
Oh, that's
somebody, maybe.
okay. That's okay. So don't spend too much time on this. Be just quite slapdash.
Sorry, so are we doing the wash now too?
Yeah.
And what color did you want us to do the wash? Was that
What kind? Just dilute it so it's not too dark and just fill the space in.
so not the white, but a darker, something darker?
Yeah, like a diluted black or a
Okay,
little
good.
bit of ink or something.
Thanks.
He says he stipulates ink, but I think, it doesn't have to be ink. It can be watercolor, something you can dilute so you get a wash basically. Do not agonize too much. I'd quite like to move on. Do you want a little bit more time, anyone, on this? Shout. Okay, well, no one shouted, so I'm going to be quite rudely moving on. So what he is saying next is, let me just see if I skipped something. No, oops, sorry, seeing too much at once here. What he's saying now is something you could try in your own time if you want to, but he says, get your branch with the one which still has at least 1 or 2 leaves on it. In my case, it's still quite a few, but a lot less than there used to be originally. Get the branch and put it on a white background on the wall about a meter and a bit away from you. So I did that in my studio. I actually placed my branch on the wall, set against the white wall. And then he says, with that distance, it's a bit like life drawing, isn't it? With that distance in mind, close one eye and then try and sketch the whole branch quite quickly as an outline in ink. And if you want to do a bit of pencil first, that's fine. If it gives you a bit of stability and security, you could do a quick outline with a pencil and then go back and add your diluted ink onto this now. So what we're aiming for is something like this, which is by no means a master drawing. So, so don't feel frightened by that. You can see what I've done. I've been trying to very quickly get the stem and the kind of what we've done with the isolated leaves, but this time attached. And note the emphasis on how the leaves come out of the branch. They're in alternate positions, so they're not symmetrical. Even though I've kind of ripped quite a few out, I think you can tell that they're not symmetrical because of these longer bits. So even though we're slapdashing kind of quite quickly along here, you learn quite a lot about the plant. So I leave that one up while I give you a few more minutes to have a go at the branch. And if you've got questions, I've found out how to open the chat with the PowerPoint being open, Simon, so I can actually deal with that if you want to.
Okay. All right.
If you can manage to close one eye, it does really help, I found. How are people getting on? Do you need a bit more time? Yes? Okay. I'm making this up as I go along a little bit, but what I would like to do is give you a choice after you finished this as much as you could, how to proceed. So I'll explain that in a minute when we move on. No pressure. Oh dear, cat's complaining to see what she wants. I'm mindful of the overall time. So I think if we kind of close this off for now and I just go through the rest of the PowerPoint and sort of point you in the direction for the last 10, 15 minutes of this practice part. Yeah. So so I think I've explained this bit already. I'm just going to skip through this bit and you can always look at the PowerPoint again. Oops, doesn't want to do this. So I think what I'm trying to get you to do with the remaining 10, 15 minutes of this practice part of the session is to think about how you can develop the drawing more towards what Ruskin showed so beautifully on his examples. So in this particular example, I had the eyelids and I actually added a bit of blue to the stain. But the main thing about this example really is to show the leaves with the different kind of, once I've plucked them, how I kind of did a quick drawing with that. This is just an illustration. It's nothing you really have to do. The choice I want to give you is whether you want to return back to the initial piece of paper, which perhaps has a bit of color on it already, it's pre-toned perhaps, and you started to draw on that. You remember you started to do the outline and some leaves and how the leaves connected with the stem. You can go back to that one and work this up now in the next 10, 15 minutes into something more complicated where you start using the white to bring the veins out or any bits which kind of reflect the sunlight. Or if you prefer, and that only dawned on me just now actually, if you prefer to use your ink wash, you don't need to have a colored ground for that because the ink is already making the paper grayish black. If you wanted to exercise white veins on top of blackish kind of gray, you could, of course, use your ink studies for that. Now, if they're dry enough, you could give that a go. Whatever you choose to do, whether you return back to your starting paper or whether you're going to continue working with the ink wash, I think we're going to spend just 10, 15 minutes max, I think. If that's okay with Simon, we're going over a bit perhaps on this kind of finishing off as much as we can. It doesn't have to be a finished drawing. It can be just a step towards beginning to see where you could take it in your own time. Hopefully something you might find time to finish off in your own time. That would be lovely. So yeah, that's the thinking. And talking about aiming for things, yeah, there's this anecdote about Lord Leighton's lemon tree. You can have a look at that in your own time. The conclusion I quite like to show you because he talks about how he actually says that it's impossible to draw every leaf on a tree, although, Lord Leighton seemed to prove him differently. But generally speaking, I think he's right, isn't he? It's impossible to look at a summer oak and draw every single leaf. It would do your head in. So there is a kind of way he wants you to find a way of getting that feeling across of every leaf is accounted for, but you're actually not drawing every leaf, really. You're just drawing something which is persuasive in its observation and its understanding of how the leaves belong to the tree. And I think this is what is his mystery, the mystery of quantity, that you're actually not doing everything in detail, and it still kind of gives you that feeling of it being detailed. That's my interpretation, but it's open to other interpretations. And I've just slotted a few of my own examples on which are sort of not exactly Ruskin anymore, but probably the sort of thing I do, i.e. my ground is actually splattered on rather than evenly distributed. But you can see the heightening with white and how that beautifully pulls leaves forward. Or perhaps another example, which is a really old one I did when I was a late teenager, where, a bit like your ink now, the sepia brown I used for this withered branch of a plum tree gave me a lovely background to actually go with white on top of it to kind of sketch out the veins. And I also used a knife to score back into the white paper, which is effect watercolorists use quite a bit. But you can only do that when it's really, really dry. So if you want to try that, I would recommend you let your ink drawing dry for a few hours, and then you get a very sharp scalpel knife, and you can sort of scratch it across the leaf, and it will reveal the white paper again. So two choices, either go back to your initial drawing and work on that a little bit more, or just carry on working with your ink drawing. Any questions? I'm just looking at chat here. Joanna is saying, I'm drawing into shapes rather than seeing it as leaves on a branch, somehow because it's not the right way up. Oh, that's an interesting, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, they're kind of hanging down, aren't they? But maybe it's quite good that you look at it as shapes because it might liberate the way you kind of portray it. And Kateri is saying, unless you're Sarah Simblet, from mere mortals, we cannot draw every single leaf or grain of wood. Yes, exemptions. Lord Leighton is another one. Thank you so much for your compliment, Kateri. Kat is complaining. Right, so 10 more minutes, 3:05, according to my knowledge. We'll close it and we'll have a bit of a quick discussion, I think.
Excellent.
Show and tell a bit, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Do I need to keep the PowerPoint open at this stage? Do you want any of them open or shall I stop?
Is there anybody who would like a particular image that Doris has been showing up on the screen?
Or better none? You shouldn't look at
Maybe, yeah, maybe if we're moving into everyone working on their own work, maybe you could end the screen share and then,
That's what I do.
yeah,
So you can
okay.
focus on your drawing and not on the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay, well, good, this is how to bless. The upside down, just following what people, I'm chatting over your efforts. I hope that's not too disruptive, but the upside down thing, it's a really interesting thing to pick up on, Joanna, because the lady who did drawing on the right side of the brain, I can't think of her name now, she talks about upside down drawing as a trick of getting proportions more correct. What's she called? Can't think of her name. I'm sure you know her, but Betty Edwards. Thank you, Joanna. You probably familiar. Yes, thank you, Frida. Perfect. Attentive lot you are. Betty Edwards, drawing on the right side of the brain, isn't it? I think, I hope it's the right side. My brain doesn't seem to remember much anymore. Anyway, yeah, this idea that you put something upside down, it makes you look at relationships in a more less biased way, maybe. No, you can't come onto the table. Down. Off you go. disruptive cut. Oops. If you are proceeding with white, I mean, I've given you choice to use a white pencil or white watercolor. And a white watercolor is often a kind of contradiction in terms. If you follow the Cotman school, you don't use white at all in watercolor, but that's only one approach to watercolor. Turner certainly used plenty of body color in his watercolors. And Ruskin used body color as well, and he certainly used white, as we've seen in the examples. So if you use white watercolor, they come either in those little, they come these days mostly in tubes, but you can also buy these pans, which I grew up with, which I still like using because they're very economic and seem to last much longer than the tubes. So you find you've got this white pan, which you've got to liberate the kind of white out of with your brush. I find it generally easier to work with a brush than with a pencil because but that's a matter of experience, I think. If you work with a brush a lot, you know how to direct it. It's like driving a car, you know kind of how to direct your brush, how much to load into it, and how you can take it to the tip point, all these kind of things. They become second nature for me, but you may find that quite hard if you're not used to that. So use whatever you feel comfortable with. Keep your pencil really sharp if it's a white pencil. You may find that the pencil will not show as much as white paint would even though the white paint in watercolor tends to be, I think, zinc white, which is semi-transparent and not fully opaque. Please correct me if that's wrong, but maybe it's just because it's watercolor, it just seems to be semi-transparent. So you find if you are using the brush and you're applying some white to the center fold, that you look at it and blink and it's disappeared. So you've got to go over it again and again until eventually enough pigments seem to be settling on the darkness and you can actually recognize there's a leaf vein in it. I'm trying to do this as we're going along, so I can maybe show you. If you're proceeding with the white now at this stage or later on, we are back to what Kateria is so fantastic with getting us to look really closely, and you'll find the cells are organized in a particular way in a leaf. And it's really interesting to see how they kind of organize themselves, these kind of little veins, which kind of go up to the right to the rim of the leaf and help construct the shape of the leaf somehow. That's how it seems to me. Sounds good, Kateri. Imaginative approach. I think improvisation is a true mark of creativity. I'll encourage it. Same with cooking, really. You haven't got a spice, you make something else do. Don't give up. Got about a minute left, I think. What is quite good about you not being able to finish off what you're doing in this session is that you can take advantage of being able to correct your drawing in a way which is probably only possible because we're using body color. And if you found, for instance, that you made a mess out of one of the leaves, you can actually just use some water and work the white back into the background. Let that dry and then just work on top of it when it's dry. So it's kind of, how can I say, it's not how watercolor normally works, because once you make a mistake, it's very unforgiving. By using the body color, you're allowing yourself to correct and work on top of each layer, and in a way makes it a richer drawing. So if you felt, for instance, that you're not happy with the results, don't give up on your branch. I would just say, put another layer of white on top of it, let it all kind of sink in and then maybe work it up a bit further. Ah, another cat.
Sorry.
They don't like being excluded, do they?
Oh, Lily.
Mine just walked all over the table, so I had to kick her out. So I think it's 3:05, so I think maybe time to show and tell and ask and discuss and whatever we like to do.
Who would like to share observations or what you've found?
I'd love to see some of the drawings,
Yeah, it'd be lovely to see that.
some of the stages. Yeah. Anyone volunteering?
I'll share.
Bring your
So
coffee.
I'll I'll
Wow.
pin I'll
Wow.
Oh, we put everyone to shame. No,
Oh,
that's so gorgeous. Really gorgeous. It reminds me of the olive tree. Thank you.
thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, bless. Any more sharing? Please, if you dare to after this.
Beautiful. Oh
I
yeah,
can't see what's happening. Why can't I see?
Joanna. You know, if you could spotlight people. There you go.
Oh, wonderful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Very beautiful. Is this the first time you've used approach?
Is this the first time? Sorry, I can't. Yeah, sorry, what was that?
Is this the first time you used that approach?
Yes, I have not used white like that. I've done it rubbing it out from the graphite ground, like
Yeah.
Terry was describing, but I've not used it on top. But I found that the staging that you've taken us through really brilliant, where we just started to get to know the thing by drawing it quite quickly and taking the leaves off, and then doing the outlines and coloring them in. It sort of helps my brain to kind of just start to land with the thing.
Well, the honor belongs to Ruskin, of course. I've only praised him, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. No,
Yeah.
I'm just quite taken. You so confidently applied the white. That's lovely to see. Anyone else? Come on. Come on, let's show us some of the goodies.
Doris, I will. Yeah.
This
These
is
are lovely.
Rachel's.
That's mine. Yeah.
Very beautiful. Sorry, and we had Suzanne, did you say you wanted to?
Yes, I'm not so precise. And also I have beech leaves, which you said earlier are
Lovely.
really, really difficult
Yeah.
because they're curling in all
Yeah,
different
they're
ways.
curling
So
too much.
yeah, I've just done, and I also last night did some paper. I coloured it with coffee and then the cerulean blue. But these are very. I need more time.
Lovely, the blues.
I don't know if you'll see those.
Yeah, good. And the
Yeah,
color.
but they're just sort of like, I can work into these later on.
So you basically used your ground for the session examples today, did
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Lovely.
Can you see that? I don't know if you can see.
We can. How did you do the blue? What did you do for the blue one?
It's cerulean blue, but like you said, I just did a wash on the paper.
Lovely and
later on.
light.
Well, yesterday actually, if I need. Yeah, so And then I did this one yesterday, or the on the white paper, but that is sort of, it's far better with the background either in this sort of like kind ochre colour
Mm.
and the cerulean blue. So I can see it in the wash with the coffee, and that looks rather lovely with these little dabs of white on it. I quite
Yeah.
like that, and I need to work into the drawings a bit more. So
Yeah, I
you
think
got
a combination, absolutely working into them, that's possible for all of you, of course, but the combination of having a ground and then maybe using another color to do this kind of setting contrast business, which Ruskin does. Can't really explain it very well, is to actually end up almost with two washes. One is the original underground, so to say, the first ground, and then the second one is sort of done in response to the shapes of the leaf. I think the combination is a really nice thing to try and play with. I probably haven't explained this very well. I'll come back in a minute about that. It's just noticed a few chats here. People just saying lovely things about your coffee being very gentle, Suzanne.
The coffee was good. I didn't have any ink, so I used one of these pens. So I put it on a water palette and then put water with it. So it was quite interesting, just a little bit of an ink out of a pen because I didn't have any ink. And then I diluted the ink on the palette with some water. So
Yeah, good.
it did actually work a little bit. So
Good to exchange recipes, isn't it? I think. Anyone up for sharing any drawings?
And I show this is how little I got done.
Can you? Oh, yeah, that's better. I can see it.
Where's the better focus?
Can you push it up a bit? Yeah,
That's
that's better.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's having trouble focusing because it's quite washy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Chinese ink. I'm working from a stone, and I'm used to
Yeah,
making graded washes from a stone. But
yeah, lovely.
I'm so unfamiliar with this way of working that I'm out of my comfort zone really,
Well, that's
which
not
will be
necessarily a bad
interesting.
thing. Are you going to try and apply some white to this, you think?
I was thinking yes. Because I'm also having to work in the house because I can't get an internet connection in the studio. I'll take it back tomorrow and see what I can do with it. But
Nice
it's
to see you
very
apply some
interesting. But
highlights. Yeah, give
Lovely.
it a go. Give it a go.
no,
Anyone else wants to say anything or? Yeah, gorgeous, aren't they? Are they yours? Sorry,
The
Paul, the chat. I should have said.
in the chat, Kateri has said the art on your wall is amazing too, Paul. Behind you.
Are they your
their
drawings?
drawings, their drawings from 2011. One of them, there used to be a wood outside my window, but we had to cut it down because I'm in the Mediterranean area, and forest fires are always a problem. So like the woods that are in those drawings no longer exist except for a few trees. The one was drawn, the dark one up here was drawn from my studio window in deep winter. There are a few birds in the trees.
Mm.
Very atmospheric. Yeah, beautiful. Are they graphite? Are they pencil or inks?
They will be probably 6B. I usually
Mm.
work with 6B, sometimes 4. But that's actually, in a sense, that's a better drawing. I was sitting on a little stool, right down in the grass, with and dead branches. It's all gone now. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's really lovely. They look so liquid and fluid. Returning to today's session, however, is there anyone who would like to still contribute anything, their drawings or their thoughts?
Reader's written, thank you, Doris, so much. The best for me was to draw quickly without thinking too much on the result. Just be confident it will work out even when it's not perfect.
Good. I haven't seen that one, so thanks for finding that. Or let's renew. Thanks for keeping an eye on this.
And Joanna has added the encouragement to look for shapes to start with and not get overwhelmed by the detail.
Well, that's just a philosophy of life, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
If you're sort of the type who quite easily gets overwhelmed, which I am, I think you need to look for little shortcuts in life.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Hand over to you, Simon.
Thank you. Well, most importantly is to thank you, Doris, for really beautifully guiding us through this session today. Lovely to have your perspective. You shared your own art so generously and your perceptions of what Ruskin is asking of us, but without being too reverential, which I think is really important because there's also just the reality of us wherever we are with what we have in front of us, taking the time. And I think you beautifully kind of illustrated that and the way you shaped the session. So very, very grateful. I'm sure everyone shares my gratitude to you for that. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming along today, the first Saturday of the year. A lovely way to start the year. We continue each month, the first Saturday of the month. So the next one will be on Saturday, the 7th of February, led again by Kateri. And then we have some other artists also leading other sessions. So we've got a lovely variety through the winter and into the spring. And this iteration of the series will end in May. And one of the things I wanted just to plant a seed of with all of you, particularly those of you who've been coming regularly, but really for any of you, is to think about, the Guild would love to continue to offer sessions of inspiration, of communal making, creating, looking, thinking. It doesn't have to be confined to the art of drawing. There are lots of the elements of drawing. Sorry, there are lots of things we could approach. But what is it about these sessions that you particularly enjoy? And once this series concludes in May, the Guild is very much up for hosting more things. And so it'd be really interesting to know what would be enjoyable, ongoing, Ruskinian inspired activity that we can do online across more than one continent, which is so wonderful. So we don't need to have that discussion now, but I just want to plant that seed as we go through the sessions. Please always feel free to write to me if you want to share thoughts, ideas. If you'd like to scan or photograph any of your drawings, we're happy to have them put on the webpage. It's lovely to gather a little gallery of things that people are doing in each session. All of that is really welcome. And with that, I think I will draw the conclusion to a session. I will end the recording.
And I just want to say thank you to everyone, if I may, just for all the kind comments and feedback already got.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doris.
Thank you, Doris.